Bitcoin just keeps moving. Everybody asking, where is the top? We'll break it down for you guys today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. I do want to thank our sponsor today, and that is Tangem. If you guys are getting into your self-custody journey, and this is probably a good time to do it, and that is get your tokens off of centralized exchanges, be able to go into your own self-custody wallet where you can do that with Tangem. Very easy to do and set up. Go to tangem.com. Use our link down below, and you guys can get our discount. So make sure and do that. Get it set up for your year-end planning and into 2025, especially as we start to wrap up, I think, what will be an interesting second leg of this bull run. So check it out. Use our discount code to help the channel. One other thing I want to get to is the SEC. And as you guys know, we've been talking about the commissioners there. It looks as though that Caroline Crenshaw is going to not, well, is not, actually has happened, was not reconfirmed. So her nomination has now been canceled. She is out at the SEC, which means that we have a potential for having 4 pro-crypto commissioners out of the 5. This would be huge because it would continue to push in the wake of what's going to happen with the Trump administration. Very positive for crypto because this is one that was probably, could have been a spoiler inside a lot of different scenarios that could play out within the SEC. So pretty good deal. If you look at what's happening on Bitcoin today, well, if you go over to Bloomberg, it seems like everything's happening with Bitcoin because all of their headlines are Bitcoin. Bitcoin raising after the longest week. Bitcoin hitting another all-time high. Everybody comparing stocks to Bitcoin. So is this the euphoria period of crypto? Let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments down below. Make sure and like the video. Subscribe here to the channel. It's one of the places that, of course, you can do that. And one thing, by the way, we're going to be doing is a Fed FOMC live stream for you guys tomorrow. We try to do those every time an FOMC meeting is happening to kind of get the full report on interest rates, but also take a look at how the Fed is thinking. That's the more important thing. If you subscribe, once you subscribe, hit that little bell. It's going to give you notifications when we do those live streams. So do that. Very easy. Other thing to take a look at right now is all-time highs driven by spot volumes. People now are pointing at about 115 as its next spot. Couple areas to look at: steady surge in spot volumes and the reemergence of Coinbase Premium in the U.S. session. So this is going to be a good one for, again, Bitcoin. In addition, steady spot buy volumes, positive news flow about Bitcoin, and then, of course, Microstrategy also jumping in and buying more Bitcoin. Seems like every week right now. And Saylor has been an absolute gangster in terms of going out and getting Bitcoin on a consistent note. Now, I have an interesting contrarian viewpoint by Raoul Pal that I'll get to in a second, but it is one thing that I think a lot of people are looking at right now. Further into this, if you look at other things that are happening, you got to look at the ETF inflows. And of course, right there, the Bitcoin ETF inflows have been staggering. Look at this. This is from November 27, just after Thanksgiving. 100, 300, 300, 600, 500, 700. These are insane flows right now on the daily basis. So again, this is pushing the price of Bitcoin, obviously, to where we've seen it come in at 108. Could we see that 110 before weekend? Could we see 115 by year end? That's the real question that everybody's asking. Taking a look at the flows, I want to go to the Bitcoin ETF flows, and you can see it right there, continuing to start to climb. Let me kind of zoom in on this a little bit. See that climb right there that's occurring right now? That is interesting because this is since November, and here we are in mid of December, and right now holding a continuous upflow in terms, and you can kind of see that just the flow dates that are coming through pretty significant over the last 30 days. So still very positive and very bullish for Bitcoin. And of course, that usually means it's bullish for some of the rest of the market. Most likely we'll see more altcoins start to move, even though they've kind of settled down right now, though I anticipate we're going to see an altcoin move very quickly. And of course, you also have to consider Ethereum. We'll talk about Ethereum, so stick around for that one. The other thing I want to take a look at is the fact that Bitcoin ETFs now have flipped US gold ETFs. This is another major milestone because when you look at the markets, and we've had gold investors on here before, you look at the markets of where gold investors are starting to play out. Many people who are investing in ETFs often will choose one or the other. You know, they're trying to figure the route to take. And if Bitcoin seems to be holding a little bit better performance, could we start to see gold investors starting to vacate and go more into the Bitcoin ETF? Right here is Eric Balchunas. He's also expecting a wave of crypto ETFs next year. And he's thinking that there's a handful that could play out here. Litecoin as being one of them. Hedera, HBAR, as a possibly, and then also XRP Solana. Not necessarily all at one time, but again, flowing through. Obviously, we've got to see some scenarios change up in the SEC, see what their mandate is going to be going forward. But if we start to get some looseness in there, ETFs could start flowing pretty heavily on crypto as a whole. Crypto is also eating TradFi's lunch. 5.75 billion Coinbase revenue now is beating NASDAQ. If you look at some of the points that's kind of interesting here is the amount of, I think, difference between what's happening in TradFi versus what's happening in DEXs and centralized exchanges. That is the intriguing thing to me, is that we're seeing a shift, and I've talked about this before, is that the investors that are starting to come into the market are under the age of 30, under the age of 40, and digital assets is clearly one of the places that they're going. And the other thing is they don't trust banks. They don't trust traditional finance. And that's why I think you're seeing such a growth move right here. I want to go to a real interesting clip real quick, because this one is Saylor talking about how far he will go on buying Bitcoin. Take a look.
Well, you're the guest of the moment. So is there a limit to how much Bitcoin you're going to acquire?
No, I've said we'll just keep buying the top forever. Every day is a good day to buy Bitcoin. We look at it as cyber Manhattan. I would have bought Manhattan 100 years ago, 200 years ago, every year for the past 300 years. You pay a little bit more than the person that bought Manhattan before you, but it's always a good investment to invest in the economic capital of the free world. You know, the world wants a digital assets framework, and the United States has a great opportunity to define a digital assets framework. We need to define the definitions of a digital commodity, a currency, a security, a token, an NFT, and an asset-backed token. And we need the rights and responsibilities of issuers and the exchanges and the owners. But that takes consensus from the executive branch, the House, the Senate, and the industry. And we didn't have that for the past 4 years. The opportunity for the U.S., it's to issue $10 trillion of digital currency and back the dollar. It's to capture $50 trillion of capital gain on the digital capital network. And I do believe with the digital assets framework that this administration could put forward, there's no reason why we won't see $500 trillion of assets tokenized over the next 21 years and $280 trillion in capital flow into the digital capital network that is Bitcoin.
And where does that lead Bitcoin's eventual price?
My 21-year forecast is for Bitcoin to appreciate about 29% a year, ARR, to $13 million a coin by the year 2045.
There you go, $13 million a coin, 2045, some big statements coming in. And if you look at the comparison to some of the biggest companies out there, remember, MicroStrategy has not been on the map that long, really only started buying Bitcoin in 2020. And where they are today, just 4 years later, they are now going up against companies like Starbucks and Nike in terms of market cap. And that's if it just goes to 138. If we continue to see the rallies on Bitcoin going forward, this is going to get crazy for MicroStrategy. Now, there are some people out there that are concerned. And anytime you look at a digital asset with a finite supply, you have to look at considerations around centralization. Raoul Pal goes a little bit further into detail of the downside to MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. Take a look.
From a philosophical level, is it right for one entity to control all the Bitcoin? Okay, that's something, if you're true to what Bitcoin is about, there should be a limit where you say, well, I don't need to do that, but whatever. I worry more about the leverage it creates in the system, because MicroStrategy is trading at a huge premium. Mm-hmm. That premium is somebody else's arbitrage. And so whether they're buying Bitcoin selling MicroStrategies or buying the options from the convertible note and that are very cheap and selling more, somewhere within that system is an enormous amount of leverage happening.
Yep.
And I don't worry so much about MicroStrategies. I worry about the unwind of the other side of the trade. Because people focus on the MicroStrategies because it's flashy, But this is what happened with Grayscale. Grayscale was trading a huge premium. People didn't realize it was creating gigantic leverage, and everything was one trade, and there was one big customer, 3 Arrows Capital.
Yeah.
And when they were forced out of the trade, it took everybody down, including Genesis, who were the arm of Grayscale, right? So they didn't see it coming either. Nobody knew there was one customer, and that's very typical of a leverage blowout.
So you can see, I mean, Raoul Pal, I think, is, he's very pragmatic about his approach toward analyzing markets. And, he's an ex-Goldman Sachs guy. And I think people understand where the market sits today. And the movement right now with Bitcoin is one of concern, especially around centralized. Now, if you look at some other analysis on this, even if MicroStrategy were to go bankrupt, it would be only if an asteroid hit Earth. And you look at the comparison here because you kind of compare against these long-term whales, and most of which are standing at around 30K in terms of their cost basis. The other thing you have to kind of look at is the MicroStrategy debt, which is $7 billion right now, and its Bitcoin holdings currently worth $46 billion. So its debt to asset ratio is pretty good, and the liquidation price is around 16.5. So I mean, right now, there's nothing really major that I think would affect it. But again, you just never know how these markets can unwind quickly. I don't think MicroStrategy sells in the next bear market. I think they hold through. And if they do, now they may sell some Bitcoin, but I don't think that a position shift would occur. They are looking at, as you heard Saylor talk about earlier, is 2045. So guys, they're looking at the next 20 years down the road. Kobe also kind of looking at what's happening right here with the Magnificent Seven. And it's also centralizing a lot of the gains at the top. The Mag 7 now reflect 33% of the S&P 500. This percentage has doubled in just 5 years. So you can see where the migration is occurring and how everybody is concerned about this. And that's the kind of scenario that we could be playing out in crypto. Now, the real question is how many winners are there going to be outside of the digital asset spectrum of just Bitcoin and Ethereum? Likelihood is you're going to only see a handful, and I think that's the ones that everybody's betting on. Now, there are going to be a lot of digital assets, meme coins, things like that will continue to move, but I think when you look at long-term gains, that's the ones that you really have to consider. Ethereum, of course, right now you have to look at, and ETH is poised for a comeback with a little bit more institutional interest. And this, of course, has started to line up about, I guess, third quarter now to where we are today, and Bitcoin versus ETH is a different kind of trade today with Ethereum now clipping over 4K. A couple of points in the article that they hit on, which I think are interesting. It led the rally, being Bitcoin, but Ethereum may be the underdog set up for a very significant recovery. And I'd like to know what you guys think. I know we have a lot of ETH bugs in the audience out there. Do you guys like Ethereum hitting an all-time high before the year end? Remember, we hit 4K, 4,100 just the other day. What are your thoughts on it? Give me your price point and give me your all-time high of where you think ETH might go in the bull run. Just in this bull run, I'm kind of curious as to whether or not you see it blasting through that position of around 48. BlackRock's ETH ETF also led the charge, attracting 523 million in weekly inflows, another major win. And then on December 14th, another 108,000 ETH worth about 418 million were pulled from exchanges, making it the biggest outflow we've seen in a single day since March. Those are good signs because it usually means people are holding, looking at staking, scenarios like that. That means they expect Ethereum to really continue to perform sometime in the future. So love to get you guys' feedback on this. A couple other things you got to look at is the Fed's rate decision. Many people now starting to look at the beginning of 2025 to be maybe a step back mode for the Fed. So we're going to see most likely a quarter basis points come off tomorrow. We'll be talking about that. But what I'm going to be watching for is Powell's indicators going into his next the first FOMC meeting of 2025. Because if we get a hold on 2025 and if inflation continues to rise, that is something that the market needs to take into dire consideration of how this market plays out, especially in the early part of 2025. We'll be breaking that all down. If you take a look at the charts right now, Bitcoin, of course, holding at 106 as we record this. If we go down and take a look at ETH right now, bouncing off of that high just the other day, it had wicked up to almost 4,100, $4,099. But starting to slide sideways again slightly. I think that some of the analysts might be right. This is going to be one to really keep an eye on. Of course, XRP, big news there is the RLUSD launch. We started to see this move out. This is on the weekly. If you go to the daily, you can kind of see these green wicks starting to paint up for movement on Ripple again. Solana also setting at around 226 after a green candle today. So some good movement in the market, but I still think we are in a sideways position. Whether this is leaning up to a Santa rally, who knows? We'll check it out. If you guys are not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in right now. It's a great place to get additional content. And of course, follow me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.